morning, good evening, everyone. This is Luda Kopakina at GAI Insights. Welcome to Daily AI News, where we rate AI news essential, important, and optional. Today, I have Paul, Tim, and Ankash, and we'll see whether we have a guest analyst joining us in a little bit. The articles are at gaiinsights.com/articles. So please follow along and let us know what you think and whether you agree or disagree with our ratings. We value those inputs very much. So let's proceed to the first article. Ankash, please.
Sure, thanks, Luda. So the first one that we have for today comes from A16Z, and it talks about the AI application spending report, where startup dollars are really going.
Yes, this is a very interesting angle on the startup scene that gives us a glimpse of what's happening with the usage. Tim, what did you think about this one?
I think it's an amusing article, but not all that relevant. It's modestly well written. They worked with Andreessen Horowitz worked with a financial company and did a survey, fairly large and significant survey. If the data is good, it should be useful in some ways, but probably not to the AI leader. It's really talking about how our companies using AI through spending rather than through things like site usage and stuff like that. So interesting take on some data, but I'm not sure the utility of it other than entertainment.
Okay, so what's
optional for me? Optional for me.
Optional for you. Okay, Ankash, what did you think?
Yeah, Luda, I was between optional and important on this one. I agree with Tim that this might not be very useful for enterprise leaders right now, but it might provide a directional sense to them that, okay, these are the top vendors in these different areas, horizontal areas, vertical areas. So might be important from that perspective, just to give them a sense that, okay, these are the top vendors that you can go to if you're looking to do this particular thing.
Interesting. I was personally on important because this is trending information. This is what actually is being used, where it's being used, and I think it's important for AI leaders to know that. And
I don't think so, Luda. That's the thing. I'm going to push back on that. This is about what these companies are spending, like Replit and OpenAI, not what companies are spending on Replit and OpenAI. That was my interpretation.
No, I thought that it was what companies are spending on. Paul, what did you think?
I thought it was actually triple optional. I thought this is a little bit like benchmarking and hugging downloads. It's a benchmark of usage, and AI leaders need to focus on not chasing tool popularity, but tool fit for their use.
Well, that's right. That's the other side is, yes, exactly.
Okay,
and also, you don't need to do a survey to know that OpenAI is the #1 tool, or Replit and Lovable are the #1 tools. This is sort of overstatement of the obvious at one level.
Okay, you have a good point. Okay, Jenny Giss just joined us. Welcome, Jenny. Jenny is with GSK, and she's Senior Director of Channel Integration and Analytics. And she is representing herself, even though she's with GSK here. Welcome, Jenny, and we're looking for your thoughts.
Oh, sure. No, I was listening to everyone with a lot of interest. I think my takeaway from this particular piece was, the spend doesn't equal the value, and there's still an enormous gap in, what we're seeing in terms of the delivering of that value. So for me, this is optional information. It lumps in a lot of different types of vendors. So I don't know that this is necessarily a fully representative data set either. It's also a very short time period. There's some interesting things like agents and vibe coding, democratizing, things that are mentioned. But again, I kind of want for more of a connection between what we're spending and what we're getting out of it and what that value is.
Okay. Thank you, Jenny. Okay, so optional it is. Let's proceed to the next one.
Sure, Luda. So the next one comes from HBR and it talks about what happens when AI sets wages.
Yeah, so this is a survey, dig into data, and very cleverly put together with some interesting insights. Jenny, what did you think about it? And if you could summarize it for us, would be great.
Sure. I mean, I love HBR, and I love how their work is written and disseminated. This is really all about how AI algorithms can begin to recommend or even determine our pay wages one day. They use some prompting techniques in order to do that. The authors are really arguing that a shift towards using AI to determine wages could bring efficiency and equity. And there are risks. I think that this is an optional article for me as well, though. It is more of an editorial piece. They're looking for less opacity in, our wage determinations. These aren't new problems. I'm kind of more interested in how people who are looking for wages are going to be using these systems, how they're going to be using these systems to negotiate their wages. And I think a big question too is what the big companies are going to do. We know that they're exploring utilizing AI to screen resumes and other portions of the hiring chains, for example. So to me, this is really an early view. I think we could exacerbate inequities that already exist through the use of these models or leaning on them too heavily. So I think the question is going to be, are we going to trust these systems more than humans? This analysis was based on gig work too. So, keep in mind, this is pretty limited. It doesn't necessarily apply at the enterprise levels just yet.
Okay, so optional from Jenny. Tim, what did you think?
Yeah, I could slightly maybe make an argument for important just because at a practical level, it points out that you might want to pay attention to what gig workers are charging because they might end up charging more. But honestly, I ended up at optional because a marketplace clears prices. So if gig workers use AI and they start raising their rates, unless everybody starts using AI and raising their rates, then it's not going to matter. The market will just clear at the appropriate rate. Whether this will add any more transparency to markets, because salary markets in particular are extraordinarily opaque, is unclear, and this paper doesn't really address that. So that's something that could be quite interesting. Is today there are two problems. One is they're just completely opaque. That is, it's very, very hard to tell what I'm worth, if you will, or what peers like me are getting in the marketplace, because corporations don't want you to know that because it gives them the upper hand in negotiations. And that's how we end up with gender-based disparities and other kinds of disparities. So they're not addressing that at all, which is a bigger issue. And then the other thing is this is about setting rates. It's subject to all sorts of fallacies, which we fall for, like the anchoring fallacy from Danny Kahneman. And so one thing, if you're a gig worker, what you really need to pay attention to is what you need, not what you can command. And if you need more than you can charge, you have a problem. If you can charge lots more than you need, you better be careful, because as most corporations know, margins get squeezed in that situation. And this doesn't address any of those issues.
Yeah. Okay. So proposal for optional. What did you think, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, lots of important issues out in the world. This is not high priority for the AI leader who's trying to drive economic value. This is something for HR or staffing or something.
Yeah, so there were some interesting observations that the data showed. There's no bias for women, it sounds like, on the mass of data that they looked at. So this is great. There was a bias on geographies. So the workers in Philippines were given lower wages than in the US. There was interesting observations about older workers. If they are consultants, their wages were higher, but if they were looking to be hired, their wages were lower. So, and the preference were for hiring was for mid-career people in 30s plus. 30s to 40s.
Right.
So
I don't think any of that's new.
Interesting
Yeah.
insights in the data.
And the other thing this points out, which is the only reason I might rate it important, but most people won't get it from this, is this shows you what LLMs do, okay? Because there are many explanations for why the data came out this way. But what it really says is it all comes from their training data. So does it mean that in their training data, women and men are treated equally? No, it doesn't. It just means that there wasn't anything in their training data to indicate that they should match differently. Also, they didn't ask about diversity, like do minority people get lower wages? And they may not get any information there because there just isn't any information out there in the training data that would talk about that stuff, and that's what they reflect. So that's one thing to always keep in mind about LLMs. They are nothing but a great reflection of what they are trained on. They have no insight in any human sense.
Yeah, that's true. And but we've seen articles in the prior versions of LLMs. There was tremendous bias on the women issue.
There is, because
right?
it's in the data they are trained on.
The training data, right? So
It's one of the biggest problems with LLMs is, look, the corpus they're trained on was largely created by a very biased set of data. And that those biases are going to come through. So all this shows you is these particular biases weren't in the training data.
Right, exactly. Okay, Ankash, we're going optional on this one.
Optional for me as well, Luda.
Okay, optional it is. Let's proceed to the next article.
Okay, the next one comes from AWS, and it is a case study about how Hexagon automates manufacturing standard operating procedures with AWS GenAI.
John was supposed to be here, so but he's not. I will take it on and let's see what you guys think. So this is a use case, actually a good one. We've seen a number of these when there's a lot of information that that needs to be digitized, documents of various sorts. And previously, Hexagon had lots of trouble digitizing them by hand and putting them into their platform called Accelerator. KMS, so the knowledge management system. So they automated it and they tell us how they did it very well. There's an architecture and the pieces of AWS and Amazon Bedrock tool set, and then it was a surprise. It was a good result of 90% accuracy at the end of it, but they don't talk about the business impact. And for that reason, I thought this article is probably, I still want to highlight it, and I was thinking important on this one. What did you think about this, Jenny?
So I appreciated reading it. I think it is it's a very interesting, clear use case study. So I agree with you on that. In a field that's very different from what I work in every day. What I left wanting for was that I didn't really see a ton of kind of metrics related information in the article. To your point, demonstration of the business value. What does this mean for others and for a broader audience? So I think just the way it was articulated makes it really hard to get, okay, what's the so what? But at the same time, I think generating and harmonizing SOPs, reducing manual effort, and improving operational efficiencies are all things that we're all very interested in. So I just kind of wanted them to tell us, what the implications are of this work.
So you went optional on this one.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. All right. Tim.
Yep, I was sort of on the optional camp. I like the AWS case studies in general, and I like this one for its clarity of prose and for the technical architecture, which is a good tutorial. So I can be talked into important because it's the kind of thing that an AI leader might want to read just to understand, okay, so this is how I put it together. And when my folks come to me and tell me something, this is sort of what it might look like, and I can understand that. Also good to pass on to your top architects, if you have folks like that in your organization, say, hey, here's a good example of how you create an efficient architecture to do this kind of thing, which is a pretty common, what we call in the tech world, design pattern. I've got
Right.
a bunch of complex documents I want to get in. I also was disappointed in the lack of business utility explanation. Also, 90% didn't seem that great to me. If I'm doing manufacturing or other kind of assembly and SOPs, those things often involve significant problems if the SOPs aren't followed. So 90%, it wasn't clear to me what that got you. So the lack of business explanation was more critical in this case.
Yeah. So they actually, and Ankash, if you can scroll down to, so they actually put it in such a way that you keep the original document and the digitized, and then humans got in the loop that you could check essentially every line.
Right. It's kind of like the old diff models that we had
Right,
for
right.
code comparison. I get all that, but they did not explain, okay, so do they have humans take it over the bar to 100%?
Yeah,
Fine, but then what's the cost and utility of doing that? They just didn't go into that next level, which is,
right.
I think, what Jenny was talking about in terms of, okay, other than great, you got to 90%, it looks like it might be more productive. Does it really generate significant productivity at the business level?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Okay,
mean,
so we're going maybe important. Paul, how is the forwardability of this article? You rate that metric.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think it's I sorted the important because I do think it's forwarded because it's such a broad use case.
Area.
I was
Yeah,
also
yeah,
frustrated that they only really talked about the build. I mean, the challenge with all this stuff is ongoing maintenance.
Exactly.
Who is the where is the source of truth? Who's checking these things? How are we checking for drift? How are we thinking about the variance when the models change over? So what is a 3-year staffing and change management ownership look like? Because as we all know, wherever this data is, SharePoint, whatever, as soon as it gets out of date, it gets out of use here. So
yeah, yeah.
AI
Yeah.
doesn't solve
Yeah.
that
So
problem.
in the famous or infamous, however you view it, Andrew's pocket theory, I would say this is a very lower back pocket kind of use case to have.
But
Pockets of
forwardable, totally forwardable. I was going to send it. I know Hexagon. I worked with them, so I wanted to forward it to a couple of manufacturing leaders. I think this is actually would be useful. Okay, Anka is going important. Okay.
Yes, Luda, important it is.
Okay.
I think while they haven't given a lot of metrics, but it's a use case which is transferable to different industries, right? So for that reason, I think it's important.
Okay. Important it is. Let's proceed to the next one, Ankash, please.
Okay, the next one comes from Thinking Lab, Thinking Machines, and it is titled Tinker is a Training API for Developers.
Yeah, so Thinking Machines, this is their, I think, the first product. So Thinking Machines was started in February 25, just very recently, by Mira Murati, former CTO of OpenAI. She wants very deeply to democratize the use of AI. And so what this is a very interesting angle on doing so. So what did you think about this, Ankaj?
Yep. So you're right, Luda. This is from Thinking Machines Lab, Mira Murati company. They have published a few research papers before this, but this is one of their first products. So basically, this Tinker is a managed services API. Developers, researchers, anybody can use it for training and fine tuning large language models. So Thinking Machine Labs, they take care of all the background stuff, and the developers have low level training controls via APIs. So it's a good model where anybody who wants to fine tune or train models, they can just take up this managed services API, and they don't need to think about the compute and the infrastructure part of it. So I was important on this one, Luda. So this is an interesting product coming from a company which has some of the big names of people who started this LLM sort of field, I would say, or who were from OpenAI, right? But there are a few concerns here as well, Luda, in terms of will enterprises be willing to expose their data to another lab because it's a managed services API, right? So there are risks. So there's a data security risk, reliability, compliance, etc. And another piece is which is the pricing is usage based, so it might lead to build shocks if there's heavy duty fine tuning. So because of those reasons, I think it's an important development, but still we need to see the performance of this product and see how it performs.
Yeah, and I will add another piece on your concerns is that Together AI, for example, another groups have commercialized the LoRa. So if you can scroll down a little bit to the architecture of what they're doing, that's already has been this piece. So they essentially put LoRa as their structure, and that has been done by a number of companies. So it's LoRa is this middle piece, a little piece that allows you to put add-on and and then combine the weights and have spent less time on training, and that has been done already. So I don't know how better this is, and that's why I think optional for me. Jenny, what did you think?
I mean, I thought it was super interesting. This isn't plug and play. I think this is more interesting for, pioneering developers. It's very early days. Is it worth watching? Sure. When you think about enterprise, there are going to be a lot of challenges there. So I would see that as, a longer term game, if you will. So, I mean, one to watch, but not and let it mature a bit so that we can understand it more. And I also just didn't really understand kind of what this is giving us versus some of the other things that are out there. Um, and that needs to be articulated very plainly for the business, if you're really trying to scale this.
Okay,
So more
so optional.
academic right now. Yeah,
Yeah,
more academic, optional, early
yeah,
days.
optional. Yeah, so Ashish is pitching in saying they're swappable LoRa adapters. I see. So that's
Yeah.
the difference. Okay, we're going optional. Tim, Paul, we need to pick up pace here.
Yeah, that's fine. This is clearly aimed at research. So unless you're a large corporation that really wants to research large language models, this is not for you. It's for universities, it's for maybe foundation model people. That's where the target is here, clearly. And it's nice for that because it's so flexible, and that's what you want when you're doing research. Let me try isolating variables, changing this or that, and seeing what happens.
Yeah, or for large companies that might be training their models.
If you're training your own model, maybe, but
Yeah. Okay.
Jenny
All
pointed
right.
out some of the challenges there.
Okay, so we're going optional. Ankash, okay with that?
Yes, Luda.
Okay, great. All right, Paul, anything to
Okay,
add?
moving.
No,
Okay.
optional, triple optional.
Okay, thanks, Ankash. Let's proceed to the last one.
Sure, Luda. So the next one comes from IBM, and it is about their IBM Granite 4.0 model series.
Yes, Jenny, this is an interesting Mamba architecture, giving some performance and scale here and processing large contexts. What did you think?
I mean, I think the angle that they're going after is very interesting. I mean, IBM is just a really kind of important company to monitor. They're leaning heavily here on trust, governance. They have they have a bounty program for detecting bugs. They're leveraging open source at the same time. So I think this is really smart. Um, I think it could get lost in the noise of other models. So I do anticipate adoption is still going to be a challenge, even at broader levels because of the competitive field that they're in. So interesting, a different sort of play. I'm not sure, how it's going to net out relative to a lot of the other models and items that we're chasing these days.
Okay, so optional for you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Jenny suggests optional. Tim, what did you think?
Yep, optional. It's really interesting and could down the road become quite important. These things are never predictable, but I would say optional right now. The interesting thing here is that this is, how do I say, a real company in the enterprise space that is using a states-based model or a hybrid model. Really, it's 8-to-1 or 9-to-1. Mamba versus Transformer. And as a result, they get great efficiencies. But nobody cares about that right now because the cost and efficiency issues are not first order problems. First order problems is getting anything working at all and getting adoption. And it's not nearly as good as OpenAI or Claude. So unless you can start to benchmark pretty close to those, or you can identify specific use cases where you can show great benefit at great reduced cost, it's just going to be hard to get traction, as I think Jenny was saying. So I say optional.
Okay. Ankash, you look at a lot of those models and their performance. What did you think?
Optional, Luda. I agree with Tim. It's pretty optional.
Yeah, because of the performance, even though the
But
underlying.
these things could be game changers. One of these, like Liquid or these Mamba-based models, could really change the game if their performance starts to approach that of the SOTA, as we call them, the frontier models, because they are much, I mean, orders of magnitude more efficient. And that is a big deal when you start getting into production, especially.
Yeah. So performance is lacking here. The architecture is cool, and the fact that they can pretty much handle infinite context windows is really cool, right?
Right. But right now, people can't get out of their own way. So they're not worried about infinite context length. They're worried about tiny context length, just get anything working at all.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Going optional, Paul?
Yeah, definitely optional. Also a product announcement. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Optional it is. Let's proceed to the next one.
Okay, the last one that we have for today comes from CNBC, and it talks about JPMorgan Chase blueprint to become the world's first fully AI-powered mega bank.
Yeah. So, Tim, I'm waiting for you to say it's a puff piece. What did you think?
It is a puff piece, but it's essential in my opinion. This is the largest bank, the largest financial institution of the world going all in on AI. I think you got to be aware of that. This is a top front pocket article because you are, first of all, because if you want to make the case that this stuff is real, here is the best natural experiment, as economists like to say, of the universe. You have one of the largest institutions in the world, hundreds of thousands of employees, going all in, saying we're already doing a lot of work. They were at the conference, actually gave a great talk on a panel at the conference about this LLM suite. And this is just, I think you just have to be aware of it. It doesn't say much beyond that, but you have to read it anyway just to be aware of this. And I think you want to pay attention to it to see how it goes. This is going to be one of those great things you can observe in real time as to how this works out.
Yeah, I understand it's the biggest bank, but this article is so thin based on like hearsay from people, no data, no, it just was very thin for me. What did you think, Jenny?
Well, so the title is a bit of clickbait, right? So I find it thin, but I do find it important to look into. I want for more details. I mean, they're giving agents to every employee. They're putting, they're feeling bullish about it. So they seem to be integrating it such that they're driving better back office process work, right? So those sorts of things are really important, that I just wish we had more information on and more transparency across industries and companies, because that's how we learn. I suspect that they're chasing a lot of the similar case studies that we're working on, even in the healthcare industry, in terms of solving for some of that. And I want to know what's behind the curtain to do it. And it'd be great if we had more information, that we could understand and learn from. I think this is important, but I want more.
Okay. So important from Jenny. What did you think, Paul?
No, absolutely essential. I think so many really important things here. One, this is a CEO-led transformation of industry. So we see that's still rare. Second, they have 250,000 employees of Axis, half of which use it every day. 90% of companies I talk with do not have 100% access to secure employee chatbot. Third, they also talked about how they had a management change. They spent much of the 4 days talking about how to integrate this in. And this is a great example of viewing AI as a capability, rewiring the whole company, and not a spot technology that's pushed down the organization. And that's what the really leaders are. So I think they are in the crucible. They are exemplar on what leadership looks like, and they're going to continue to pull ahead. And it's lastly, it's example of, the dinosaurs are dancing. And this is a dinosaur that's dancing in a regulated industry where usually, hey, we're a big company, we're a big process, we're regulated, we're going to do this in 5 years from now. It's not an excuse.
Okay. All right. Essential it is. Good points. Thank you. All right. Let's prepare the scorecard. Paul, any announcements?
No, we're still all following a wonderful conference this week here in Boston here. So tons of follow-up items there. Lots of GenAI 101 and 201 requests for our services there. So we're excited about that. And we're also finishing up Boston AI Week, which was the first week here in Boston with 120 AI events throughout the city. So it's really helped galvanize the city around AI.
Yeah.
And we're going to do highlights of the conference on the Learning Lab on Monday.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, on Monday we'll do highlights. On Monday,
Okay.
Learning Lab at 7.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks for catalyzing all of this. It's really great. Congrats on that. Okay, so today we have 1 essential, 1 important, and 4 optionals. Thank you, Valda, Ashish, all the other listeners for contributing. And thank you, Jenny, for joining. Very good comments. Really appreciate it. See you all on Monday, and happy Friday.